On a freezing night in November 1619, in a small room heated by one of the great iron stoves of the time, a 23-year-old young man stands immobile, his eyes shining with a feverish intensity. He has just experienced something that will change his life and, by extension, the history of Western thought. This young man is René Descartes. That night he has a series of 3 dreams that he interprets as a divine revelation. In his dreams, he glimpses the possibility of a universal science capable of unifying all human knowledge, a science based not on the authority of the ancients or on tradition, but on pure reason and mathematics. This night marks the beginning of an intellectual quest that will revolutionize philosophy, science, and our very understanding of what it means to be human. Let us rewind to March 31st, 1596, in the small village of La Haye-en-Touraine, where a child has just been born. It is René Descartes. The newborn is so fragile that the midwife predicts he will not live long. What an irony of fate for one who will become one of the most influential thinkers in history. Young René grows up in a kingdom of France still marked by the wars of religion. These conflicts between Catholics and Protestants have left an indelible mark on French society, calling into question religious and moral certainties. It is in this context of doubt and questioning that Descartes will forge his thought. His father, Joachim Descartes, is a counselor in the Parliament of Brittany, and his mother, Jeanne Brochard, dies when he is only a year old. From a young age, René stands out for his insatiable curiosity and sharp mind. His father affectionately nicknames him "my little philosopher," due to his incessant questions. However, this precocious intelligence is accompanied by fragile health. Young René is pale, often ill, and doctors recommend that he stay in bed late into the morning. This habit of reflecting in bed will later become a working method for the adult philosopher. At the age of 10, young Descartes enters the Jesuit College of La Flèche, one of the most prestigious educational institutions in the kingdom. A new world opens up to him: Latin, Greek, logic, mathematics, physics, metaphysics. The program is rigorous and demanding. Education at La Flèche is typical of medieval scholasticism, a dominant teaching method for centuries that relies on the study of ancient texts, particularly those of Aristotle, and on exercises in formal logic. Students learn to argue and debate, but always within the strict framework of Christian doctrine and the authority of the ancients. However, the brilliant student Descartes begins to feel a sense of unease. He finds that the education he receives, while vast, lacks solidity. The professors cite Aristotle and the ancients as indisputable authorities, but Descartes wonders how one can be sure that these ancients were right. One day, immersed in the study of a treatise on logic, a thought strikes him. Does all this knowledge not rest on fragile foundations? Should we not question everything and rebuild our knowledge on more solid bases? This intuition will germinate in Descartes' mind for years, pushing him to seek a method to achieve certain and indubitable knowledge. After his studies, Descartes could have followed the path laid out by his father and become a lawyer or magistrate. But the young man thirsts for experience. He decides to enlist as a volunteer gentleman in the army of Prince Maurice of Nassau. This young man, small in stature and fragile in health, dons armor and finds himself riding across Europe, participating in the 30 Years' War, a conflict that tears Europe apart. Yet even amid the chaos of war, his mind continues to work. These years of travel are crucial for Descartes. He discovers the diversity of customs and opinions across Europe. This experience reinforces his conviction that truths considered self-evident in one country can be rejected in another. He concludes that most of our beliefs are based on custom and education, rather than on reason. It is during these travels that he meets Isaac Beeckman, a Dutch scholar who rekindles his interest in mathematics and physics. This meeting is crucial. It convinces Descartes that mathematics can be the key to understanding the universe. Then comes that famous night in November 1619, the night of the 3 dreams. Descartes sees a sign. He must dedicate his life to the search for truth through reason. Back in the Kingdom of France, Descartes begins to develop his philosophical method, but the intellectual climate of the time is dangerous for innovative thinkers. The shadow of the Inquisition looms over Europe. Galileo has just been condemned for daring to assert that the Earth revolves around the Sun. Descartes then decides to exile himself in the Netherlands, where he can work in relative peace. It is there, in the calm of the Dutch polders, that he will elaborate his revolutionary philosophy. His method is radical. He decides to doubt everything, absolutely everything. His senses can deceive him. His memories might be illusions. The world around him? Who knows? Perhaps it is just an elaborate dream. Descartes pushes doubt to its extreme limits. He even imagines a malicious or evil genius, an all-powerful entity that would constantly deceive him. In this scenario, how can one be sure of anything? It is at the edge of the abyss of absolute skepticism that he finds his point of support. Even if he doubts everything, he cannot doubt that he doubts. And if he doubts, it means he thinks. And if he thinks, it means he exists. I think, therefore I am. Cogito, ergo sum. This simple yet powerful phrase becomes the foundation upon which Descartes will reconstruct his entire philosophy. The importance of this discovery cannot be overstated. For the first time, a philosopher bases certainty not on God, tradition, or the external world, but on the very act of thinking. It is a Copernican revolution in philosophy. From this certainty of his own existence as a thinking being, Descartes develops a worldview that will profoundly mark Western thought. Dualism, the mind-body distinction. For Descartes, the human being is composed of two distinct substances: the body, which is an extended substance, res extensa, and the mind, which is a thinking substance, res cogitans. The body is like a complex machine obeying the laws of physics. It can be studied, measured, and dissected like any material object. This mechanistic view of the human body paves the way for modern medicine. The mind, on the other hand, is the seat of thought, will, and consciousness. It is immaterial and escapes the laws of the physical world. For Descartes, it is this capacity to think that defines the essence of being human. This radical separation between body and mind has profound implications. It allows Descartes to reconcile the emerging science with Christian faith. The material world, including the human body, can be studied scientifically without threatening the existence of the immortal soul. However, this theory also raises thorny problems. If the body and mind are two distinct substances, how do they interact? How can our thoughts influence our physical actions and vice versa? Descartes argues that this interaction occurs through the pineal gland, a small gland located at the center of the brain. This idea will be widely criticized later, but the mind-body problem it raises remains a subject of debate in philosophy and neuroscience to this day. Cartesian dualism has had a lasting impact on our culture. We find it in the way we think about ourselves, in our language. I am not in control of my body, and even in certain medical practices that treat the body and mind separately. But Descartes does not stop there. He develops a method for clear thinking and problem solving, a method that will influence not only philosophy, but also the sciences and even our everyday way of thinking. This method, outlined in his famous Discourse on the Method, includes 4 rules. Never accept anything as true without evident proof. Divide each problem into as many parts as necessary to solve it better. Conduct thoughts in an orderly fashion, starting with the simplest objects and gradually rising to the more complex. And make complete enumerations so that nothing is omitted. These rules may seem simple, even obvious today, but at Descartes' time, they were revolutionary. They proposed a systematic and rational approach to tackling problems, in contrast to the scholastic method based on authority and tradition. The first rule, that of methodological doubt, is particularly important. It invites one to suspend judgment and critically examine all beliefs. This attitude is at the heart of modern scientific inquiry. The second rule, that of analysis, is foundational for many problem-solving methods, whether in mathematics, engineering, or management. The idea of breaking down a complex problem into simpler subproblems is widely used. The third rule, that of order, reflects Descartes' conviction that knowledge must be constructed systematically, moving from the simple to the complex. This approach has profoundly influenced the organization of educational curricula. Finally, the fourth rule, that of complete enumeration, underscores the importance of rigor and thoroughness in reflection. This principle is central to many scientific methodologies. The influence of Descartes on Western thought is so profound that it is difficult to measure its full extent. In philosophy, he is considered the founder of modern philosophy. His rational approach and method of doubt opened the way for many philosophical currents, from rationalism to idealism. In science, the Cartesian approach played a crucial role in the development of the scientific method. The idea that the natural world functions like a machine governed by mathematical laws was fundamental to the development of modern physics. Isaac Newton, for example, relied heavily on Descartes' mechanistic view to develop his laws of motion. In mathematics, Descartes made major contributions. He is the inventor of analytic geometry, which unites algebra and geometry. The coordinate system we use today bears his name, Cartesian coordinates. This innovation allowed for the graphical representation of algebraic equations, opening up new possibilities in mathematics and physics. Even in our daily lives, Descartes' influence is present. When we speak of thinking in a Cartesian manner, we refer to clear, logical, and methodical thinking. The idea that complex problems can be solved by breaking them down into simpler parts is widely used in various fields, from project management to conflict resolution. Despite his fragile health, Descartes continues to work tirelessly. He publishes his major works: Discourse on the Method in 1637, Meditations on First Philosophy in 1641, and Principles of Philosophy in 1644. These works generate both admiration and controversy. They are read and discussed throughout Europe, making Descartes an intellectual celebrity. However, Descartes' life takes an unexpected turn in 1649 when Queen Christina of Sweden, fascinated by his philosophy, invites him to her court to be her tutor. Descartes hesitates. He has always preferred tranquility and solitude for his work. Moreover, his health is fragile, and the Swedish climate is notoriously harsh. Ultimately, he accepts the invitation, perhaps seeing an opportunity to disseminate his ideas at the highest level, or perhaps flattered by the attention of a queen. But this journey to Sweden will be fatal. The harsh climate of Stockholm and the queen's insistence on having lessons at 5 a.m. take their toll on his fragile constitution, and Descartes dies of pneumonia on February 11, 1650, at the age of 53. His death in a foreign land is somewhat symbolic. Descartes, who spent his life questioning received ideas, dies far from his homeland, like an exile of thought. Despite his immense influence, Descartes' ideas are not without criticism. His mind-body dualism has been challenged by advances in neuroscience, which show that the brain and consciousness are intimately linked, making it difficult to maintain the idea of a mind entirely separate from the body. His mechanistic view of the world has been nuanced by quantum physics and chaos theory, which have shown that the universe is far more complex and unpredictable than Descartes imagined. Some philosophers have criticized the Cartesian approach as being too individualistic and detached from the world. The philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty, for example, emphasized the importance of our bodily experience in our understanding of the world, in contrast to Descartes' purely intellectual approach. Nevertheless, Descartes' influence on modern science is undeniable. His vision of a mechanical universe governed by mathematical laws was fundamental to the development of Newtonian physics. His method of systematic doubt and rigorous reasoning is at the heart of the scientific method. The idea that theories should be tested and potentially refuted rather than accepted based on authority is a direct legacy of Descartes. In medicine, his mechanistic view of the human body paved the way for a more scientific approach to health and disease. While we now recognize the importance of psychological and environmental factors in health, the idea that the body can be studied as a complex but understandable system remains central to medicine. In the field of artificial intelligence, Descartes' ideas continue to be debated. His separation of mind and body raises the question, could a machine think? If thought is independent of the body as Descartes suggested, then why not? This question, known as the Cartesian problem, remains a topic of intense debate in philosophy of mind and cognitive science. The legacy of Descartes remains immense and relevant in a world where information circulates at a dizzying speed, where fake news and misinformation are omnipresent. The Cartesian method of systematic doubt is more important than ever. It reminds us of the necessity of thinking for ourselves, of not blindly accepting what we are told, but of seeking solid evidence and reasons. At the same time, the questions raised by Descartes about the nature of consciousness and the relationship between mind and body resonate in current debates about artificial intelligence and the nature of the human mind. Can we create thinking machines? What truly distinguishes human intelligence from artificial intelligence? The Cartesian quest for certainty remains as relevant as ever in an increasingly complex and uncertain world. We continue to seek anchor points, truths upon which we can rely. Although we may have abandoned the idea of absolute certainty, the aspiration for clarity and rigor in our thinking remains a powerful ideal. Thus, more than 350 years after his death, Descartes continues to challenge us. He invites us to doubt, to question, to think. He reminds us that philosophy is not an abstract exercise, but a living quest for understanding ourselves and the world around us. After all, as Descartes so aptly stated, to reach the truth, one must, at least once in their life, rid themselves of all the opinions they have received and rebuild their entire system of knowledge from the ground up. In a constantly evolving world where yesterday's certainties are questioned today, the Cartesian approach offers a valuable tool for navigating complexity. It encourages us not to settle for appearances, to dig deeper, and to seek solid foundations for our understanding. Descartes reminds us that critical thinking is not a luxury, but a necessity in an age of overwhelming information, where opinions are often confused with facts. The ability to doubt constructively, to analyze rigorously, and to reason clearly is more crucial than ever. Ultimately, the most enduring legacy of Descartes may not be a specific theory or idea, but rather an attitude, that of relentless intellectual curiosity, the courage to question established ideas, and the conviction that through the exercise of our reason, we can better understand ourselves and the world around us. So the next time you find yourself accepting an idea without questioning it, or following a habitual way of thinking without reflection, remember Descartes. Take a moment to doubt, to question, to think, for it is in this act of thought, in this I think therefore I am, that lies our deepest humanity and our capacity to shape our understanding of the world.